We'd like to welcome you to BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. We're being joined by Mark Polite in Harlem and also by Morocco Coleman in Atlanta. Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you?
Great. About yourself?
Good. Thank you.
Good deal. Mark, I know we kind of got you in the middle of something, but your thoughts on yesterday. Have you ever seen anything like that?
Absolutely not. I mean, unfortunately, what happened yesterday is unprecedented in American history. We've never seen the what was supposed to be a regular peaceful transfer of power, just the counting of electoral votes, go completely haywire and just get bogarted by bigots and white supremacists and Trump sympathizers. Um, this has never happened before, and it sets a very dangerous precedent for this country because things like this are liable to repeat. Because these people are dead serious, and then they're not just going to go away like that.
So living there in New York City, you have seen instances of domestic terrorism before. 9/11 is just one of the many. Could you relate to what the people of DC were going through yesterday, Mark?
Absolutely, because when it came across the live stream, what was going on in DC, it just brought back a lot of eerie memories. Like, of course, as a New Yorker, like 9/11 is always going to be like a reference point for me. And that was a day of complete chaos. We didn't know what was happening, and it was just complete mayhem. We thought that a world war would follow behind this, but to witness what happened yesterday, I mean, this is a portent of civil unrest, and it was, even though the votes were certified, the electoral college votes were certified, but this was definitely an example of a right wing coup. You had armed protesters. You can really say that they're more insurrectionists more than anything. You had armed protesters coming in and storming the Capitol building. I mean, we all know that the police and authorities, had that demonstration been a Black Lives Matter protest, the reaction would have been completely different. They would have clamped down so hard you wouldn't even have known that there was a protest there. And then to lead to that point, that kind of goes to show you that there was a lot of collusion with the police forces there on the ground and these protesters, so to speak, because there came up some images of these the police officers taking selfies with the demonstrators. Like, something should happen to those officers that did that, because you're basically lionizing these people and you're saying that what they're doing is cool, and that's a serious problem. I can hear you.
You're on mute. Donnie, we can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Want to ask you one more question, Mark Polite, but also we've just been joined by attorney J. Wendell Gordon, aka the Warrior Lawyer here in Maryland, and also by Cameron J. Terry. Welcome to the show, Cameron. Mr. Polite, do you think race had anything to do with it? Do you think if these protesters, for instance, were the Black Lives Matter, it would have turned out differently?
Absolutely. That's, and when you see it, this is a live. Yesterday was a live show of open white supremacy. That's exactly what this thing was. When you really think about how white people respond to the police, there's no fear of them. They can just go and be and feel like they can just do anything without any recourse. And we all know, had that been a peaceful Black Lives Matter demonstration, or even say, I don't know, like a demonstration that was talking about like a labor issue, it would have been completely cracked down upon. There would have been no overwhelming. There would have been no overwhelming of the police there. If you contrast, I've seen demonstrations in Harlem, and peaceful demonstrations in Harlem that were cracked down upon viciously, and did not even threatened to get out of control, and the police reacted more so than what happened yesterday. I mean, when you think about the level of security, I mean, like, this wasn't a failure. This was deliberate. This was collusion, you know, and it really makes you want to look at the role of the police and why was this allowed, and that's a much bigger problem.
Again, we've been talking with Mark W. Polite. His website is politeonsociety.com. He's a Black Wall Street honoree and a longtime supporter of our effort in Harlem with the Black Wall Street movement. Down in Atlanta, Morocco Coleman, a veteran, former sergeant. Morocco, we talked with you yesterday. But let me just get straight to it. If it were a black protest, if it were Black Lives Matter storming the Capitol, climbing the walls, breaking the windows, pulling out guns, what would be the difference?
The difference would be that we would all be able to see the new toys and the new weapons that they haven't produced yet. We got a preview to this question. Remember when Trump called out not the National Guard, but he called out the military, an active duty military unit that would be the kind of unit that would go into Afghanistan or Iraq, etc. He called out the military to go against Black Lives Matter groups and others demonstrating there in DC, and had them to escort him across the yard from the White House so that he could go and hold his Bible up and have his little say in front of the church there. That was just to walk across the streets in the face of young people protesting. But let's call it for what it is. We know exactly what we saw. We saw white people go up against white people. And you saw protection and reverse how racism works completely differently. Because when the job of the Capitol Hill police is to protect those sacred buildings, protect the Congress, the Senate, the political appointees, and as such. And they were missing in action. I heard the mayor of DC, Ms. I think Brower, a little while ago, and she was saying something to the effect that she couldn't call up the National Guard unless she made a request directly, I think, to the general. So that didn't happen, and she didn't explain why that was such a delay. Well, once you get past that, then where is the DC Police Department? So everybody was like they had been given orders, stand down for whatever particular reason. And then we saw these people take over the capital of the United States, and very little has been done about it. Now, they said there were 68 that were arrested, and only one of the arrestees was local. So I don't know what that says, but this is a dire situation.
Yeah, I think that was well stated. I'm getting feedback a little bit, but let me see what's going on here. Donnie, you're on mute.
Okay. Come on in, Jay Wendell. Cameron, you got to unmute yourself. There you go.
All right. Yeah.
I mean,
Jay Wendell, you've been listening. Your thoughts?
I was outraged. I was completely outraged, and never before have I seen us as a country look feckless and unempowered. I was outraged because we're patriots. You know, African Americans are truly patriots. We are vested in this country. And I think all of us felt the same outrage and anxiety when we're looking at these people rummage through our halls of Congress with no regard to the reverence of those halls. And even though we've probably never been there, some of us have never been there, we understand the reverence of that hall. We understand what those institutions mean, and we respect those institutions. I was undone when I saw that picture of a guy sitting in the speaker's seat in the chamber, and they just took over. I mean, they looked like animals in there, and there was nothing to stop them. And I guarantee we've only seen the beginning. They're going to come back, because if you were an organization, not even they probably were an organization like that, you would feel empowered or emboldened by the lack of accountability and the lack of consequences that you face for doing that. And so, as an American citizen, America is sick right now. She is sick. It is our job, once again, the burden bearers, African Americans, to nurse her back to health, because it's going to take us. As we bailed them out in the last election, we'll have to bail them out of this situation as well. But this time, we need to get something for it. And,
I want to go back to Morocco for a second. Yesterday, you introduced us to the term sedition.
Yeah. This is treasonous. This is treason.
Morocco, where did you first encounter sedition? Sedition.
Yeah.
I first encountered sedition back in 19.
Morocco, where did you first encounter sedition?
Yeah.
I first encountered sedition back in 1966 when I joined SNCC here in Atlanta. And at the moment that I was signing the papers, joining up, a black man had been shot down in Southeast Atlanta. So 3 guys that were signing me up asked me, do you have driver's license? I said, yeah. They said, well, the pigs got our driver's license. If they see us driving that van out front, they will arrest us. Your first official duty is to drive us to the scene. So I drove them to the scene, and I knocked the mayor off the top of the police car. And all heck broke loose, bottles and bricks started flying, and it was a full-scale riot. Well, the 3 guys that I took there were Stokely Carmichael, Rap Brown, and Cleve Sellers. And right after that, any activities that we were involved with for the community and based on what was happening to our people, the power structure in Atlanta started using the terminology sedition against the government. They took a broad sweep of a sedition and tacked it on to something that was more or less a city problem, which was not apropos the way it was being used. But then that caused me to look into that word sedition. I had heard it in Vietnam, but I didn't know what it really meant. And so so now that was the first time that I really heard anything about sedition during the civil rights movement. And then once the Black Panthers out on the West Coast started stepping forward, then the government really started using the word sedition and treason against the United States government.
Attorney Jay Wendell, and then we come over to you, Cameron. Jay Wendell, sedition, what is it? You got to unmute yourself.
Sedition is the conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against the authority of the government. And so what he did absolutely yesterday, what Trump did was sedition, because he got all of those people riled up, got them to take action, and they were very dangerous in that process.
You agree, Jay Wendell?
Absolutely, absolutely. Sedition, treason, you just run down the list. It's all there. Burglary, theft. I mean, from the federal offenses to the state offense, RICO. I mean, geez, it was all there. Conspiracy. You just go down the list. I mean,
but the thing is, they've eliminated all of that, and they've only given them the charge of trespassing. So any of the waiting things that they would have done, which would have given them some heavy consequences, they wiped that away.
Riot. Well, the ones who were arrested the majority of them, I was just listening to Mayor Bowser. She was saying that the majority of them were basically arrested for breaching the curfew, and some being on Capitol federal grounds. So that's where the trespassings come from. They didn't start to arrest people until after 6 o'clock. So all that stuff that happened inside of the Capitol, and this is what I just listened to, and that's where my information is coming from. All that stuff that happened inside the Capitol, there's been no one really held accountable for that. And I don't think there's going to be.
On that note, Jay Wendell, should not. They pull out all of the body cameras, the CCC footage, and arrest every person that broke law going into that building. Cameron, I see you shaking your head. Come on, chime in.
It speaks to the disparity in how the media is characterizing the different movements of the Black Lives Matter movement and this riot we saw yesterday. The peacefulness, the few riots that did occur during the Black Lives Matter movement, those few small, minute occurrences of violence were met with brute force. Even the peaceful marches, a lot of them were met with brute force, losing eyes, being just picked up by unmarked police officers and not knowing where they want to go. And you see a mass of people, all similarly from one demographic, march on the Capitol, take over the Capitol, and just are free to leave at their own accord with no interruption from law enforcement. It's just a blatant acceptance by law enforcement of the difference in treatment of people of color and Caucasian. It's disheartening, and as you know, someone coming up in the legal field, it leaves a hard distaste in for a fight of equality. These politicians are coming on speaking during last night's vote that, this is America. We need to come together. We need to return her back to her great glory. What great glory? We keep overstepping the fact that we've always been treated like this. We've always been oppressed, and there really needs to be some awakening within the walls of that Capitol building. Like that, if this wasn't an awakening, I don't know what will be. It's laughable to watch someone turn this much of a blind eye to an atrocity. I don't think there's been an American attack on our soil like this since 9/11. Like, this was an attack. This is a terrorist attack. Like, I actually knew of someone who was on the floor, a young lady. She works for a senator. She had to flee the floor with the senators because the infiltration. And to hear that described, she was fearful for her life. To hear that described is an occurrence of similar, and it's not of the same magnitude, by no way, shape, or form, but of the franticness of 9/11, the uncertainty. No one knew what was going to happen. And to put these people's lives in jeopardy and not hold anyone accountable, to watch officers on the news live open up the perimeters, gates you guys had off, and allow masses of people to go in and march in, it's just ridiculous. Any other day, it's just, yeah.
Your mic is muted, Donnie.
Mark, you're in New York. 9/11. It rings the bell.
Unfortunately, yeah, it does. In terms of how the severity of what happened and what we witnessed, I mean, it's almost like unspeakable. Like that was an instance of terrorism coming from outside the country, and I think it's fair for us to say right now that what happened yesterday is an instance of right-wing domestic terrorism, and that's the bottom line. Because after this, when I really look at the history of at least just the past 4 years, right? I don't want to hear any more false equivalencies between the far right and Black Lives Matter. I don't want to hear any of that. And furthermore, when it really comes to understanding what we're up against, like, this is like almost a repeat of Charlottesville, Virginia. That would happen down there, but just on a much bigger level. So the clear and present danger and the biggest threat is not from some imaginary aggressive Black Lives Matter people, not from some imagined blown out of proportion Antifa contingent, but in the United States today, the greatest danger is the American far right.
Yeah. Quebec Kane, would you agree?
Absolutely. I think what we have seen yesterday was a clear demonstration of the inequality of consequences in this country. When there's, a Black person involved, there's going to be an over enforcement of consequences. And when there's a white person involved, there's an under enforcement of those same consequences. It could be the same exact crime. And we've seen this, time and time again in the courtrooms. Now we see it on the steps of the Capitol, banging through the doors, and on the news, and so what is going to be done about it? The only people that can be held accountable are those who are making the laws and enforcing the laws, and the accountability has to be real for our community being able to see, now we're not excusing anybody who commits a crime, but the thing is are the consequences going to be on the same level and balance and justice? Just in that sense of being equal for the crime that's committed, and it's so many times and so often it just hasn't been. You go in the courtroom and you've got, a young Black man who's, racing down the street, shouldn't be racing down the street, got a bunch of tickets in the process. A young white man who's done the same thing, racing down the street, got a bunch of tickets in the process. This young white man goes up and everything is wiped the slate clean. Oh, we'll give you a second chance, probation, before judgment. And then the young Black man goes up and he says, oh, no, you got to pay all the fines. You're going to get all of these points on your record, and you're going to have to, go to this class in order to, so you the hike up in your insurance. You see the hike up in the expenses that you have to pay for the crime that you committed. Now, granted, you should pay the consequences for any crime that you commit. But the question here is whether those consequences are equal or just, looking at the individual being judged just on the basis of color of skin. And it's not. In this country, it's not.
Morocco, when I think of your experiences in Vietnam, you came home, however it worked, with some degree of trauma.
Yeah.
Living in these United States, seeing what Mark saw in New York with 9/11, what we saw yesterday at the Capitol, is this not like a war zone?
Yeah. And I don't like to use this word loosely because I'm a victim of it, but there are instances where I have to look at this thing called PTSD. It is primarily associated with warfare, but they're in postponed traumatic event that comes and gets you later. So yeah, people suffer from 9/11, and there's some people that are suffering, that will and are suffering from what we saw yesterday. But something else that Mark touched on, something with the 9/11 thing. Kind of follow me here. Now, all of my life, man, on Capitol Hill and certain places, man, it was like the United States government with its might and power and everything. Like, you can't get to the White House because they've got bazookas on top of the White House. Planes can't come into the airspace. Capitol Hill is protected. And you look at the might of the United States back to 9/11. When 9/11 took place, with all our might and power, not one of those planes supposedly was shot down. They attacked the United States. and you've got either 3 or 4 planes out here in American airspace. We've got all of these jet planes and military equipment, but we were impotent in that instance because we can't find the planes up there. And so now this is an attack on American soil, and with all of our might, we could not bring those planes down for whatever reason. So our hands were tied more or less. Then you look at yesterday, Capitol Hill with all of its might and the protections and everything up there. And now you got a mob like that, terrorist that attacks. And all of a sudden we're impotent again because the police are impotent. The National Guard is impotent. The military is impotent because of the leadership. Then again, they tell you the White House, how much protection is at the White House. But then you always hear about somebody landing a plane on the front lawn and they had to chase them across the lawn and whatnot. And so it you know, all of this might and power is either being held back for a reason or there's something really wrong with our protections in the United States and it's not what we think it is. I don't know the answer to it, but it's something that bears looking into. You know, we're not really as protected as we think we might be.
It
Yeah,
sure
I
is
mean,
shady.
if the only-
Shady.
Marcia?
No, I said it's shady. And part of the challenge that I have is that we sit down and look at the capacity of the Department of Defense. And you have right down the street, literally down the street, around the corner is the Pentagon. Same Pentagon that a plane could fly into. I was living in Virginia at that time, and it literally flew into the Pentagon. That's supposed to be, scared me to death because that's supposed to be our first line. That's supposed to be all of our protection, the housing right there. And you mean to tell me that you had almost 1,000 some odd people down the street at the nation's capital and you couldn't deploy? The Marine Corps is right there down the street. There is a whole reserve that's right at M Street down in that area. You mean to tell me you could not deploy any of that military personnel to get up there and stop that foolishness? What is that about? What does that say about our Department of Defense? What does that say about the leadership of this nation? And how dare you allow this to occur?
Yeah, you got Bowling Air Force Base, Andrews Air Force Base. You got Quantico, Virginia. What they got going on down there?
How is that possible?
All surrounding the
How is that possible?
DC metropolitan area.
It was a mandate to stand down.
On the ground, you had national. That's right. You had National Guard. That's in each one. It's right there in Prince George's County. You got National Guard in DC. You got National Guard in Maryland. And you mean to tell me that there are boots on the ground and you couldn't put them in a truck and drop them off over there on Connecticut Avenue? That says to me there's a bigger issue going on in this government, and nobody wants to deal with it. And they are literally going to try, overthrow this government because they already showed you yesterday. They showed you yesterday, and I have been hysterical about this because I've seen it. I have worked with the United States Marine Corps. I work with generals and senior flag officers. You cannot tell me that this was not approved.
It made so much sense. Like watching that yesterday, back in the summertime, actually going down to marches and whatnot, seeing the presence of the military and the police officers. It seemed like, I've never been in the war zone, but you see it on TV, you just see Humvees and tanks and all these officers, military officers marching down in lines, and you wonder, it's like, what's going to happen next. You're fearful, but to see a violent mass of people,
civilians
from out of town,
there's not even one military troop in the downtown area, and you guys knew about this weeks in advance. It's laughable, and it shows you the intent of those in power in the military, because it's even with the change of power, those put in power are still going to be in place, and that mindset of how they were able to maneuver yesterday, or a lack of action yesterday, shows that this is going to be ongoing in the next presidential
cycle.
transition.
Question. That's exactly right. And here's the thing. If these are extremists, they are extremists. And when you have that kind of extremist that allows people to do what they did yesterday, a woman died. All of our leadership is in Capitol Hill and their safety is compromised. That was a coup. And that meant that you have somebody that is bigger than Donald Trump who's going to take over this nation. And people are taking it lightly. This is not a game. That boy can't think. That's not who he is. He doesn't have the capacity to do that. And somebody, Putin, is running all of that. And the reality is that we all need to be very careful about how we move and how we manage our homes and how we protect ourselves by any means necessary.
J. Wendell Gordon, should someone from the military be charged with an offense for failure to protect the Capitol? You had congressmen. You had congressmen down on the floor. Did you see the lady praying? You're muted, Jay Wendell.
I did see that. Let's stop with the commander-in-chief, to be honest with you.
Right.
Let's start with the commander-in-chief. You're talking about criminal charges. I think his conduct rose to that level yesterday. Mm-hmm. Many a times, the things he had done, it's kind of ambiguous. It's a double entendre where to get to that threshold of beyond reasonable doubt, I think there was a lot of wiggle room. But yesterday, and the marching orders that he gave out, I think that it's all there. Like I said, it's definitely impeachable.
Yes.
He is criminal, and whereas before I used to say they're not going to do anything to President Trump, but now I think that he's actually gone too far. And if you have the right people in office, perhaps there will be some steps to take some type of action for what happened yesterday. And it begins with him, to be honest with you. So if Merrick Garland is not afraid of what the optics may appear to look like if he went after Trump, I think he should do it. If he's going to be the next attorney general for the United States, I think he needs to investigate Trump's activities with what happened yesterday and bring charges against Donald Trump. And if he can't do it because of whatever immunities that may protect him or his actions while he was in office, if this doesn't go beyond those immunities, then it's got to be some type of state government action. He needs to get prosecuted, because if he's not prosecuted, if he's allowed to walk away with impunity, and then he's just going to be 20 times worse. He's going to rev up his base to be 20 times worse, and everything's got to be 20 times worse. He needs to be prosecuted for something. He needs to be put in jail.
They need to drag him out of the White House.
He needs to go.
Are they going to do the 25th Amendment? Or are they going to put that into force at this point? What do you think about that?
I think, that's Pence. Those are his loyalists. So I don't think Pence has a bone in his body that wants to harm Trump. But at the same time, Pence was only reason why he did what he did because he was backed up against the wall. And he has some future aspirations of perhaps running in 2024. And he didn't want to lose it completely all, because he would be going against the Constitution. Article 25, the 25th Amendment is not going to work. I just don't see it working or being invoked in this situation, at least not yet.
Cameron said something a few minutes ago. He said the powers there in D.C. looked as if they had been told to stand down. Mm-hmm. And it makes me wonder also, all the controversy about Trump being involved with Russia, and we see the way that he's treated Russia and a few other these nations that fall in the category of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, man, when you see people in government, congressmen and senators and whatnot, especially the Republicans that support Trump in the face of all of this.
Right.
Let's say if Trump is really involved with Russia, like we think and whatnot, then he's got to have some support system. So now, let's say he gets a couple of these other congressmen or senators and whatnot, they all getting kickbacks and everything. And so they have to turn and look the other way. And it might be so insidious in there that it's almost like losing part of the government, because you got to remember here, man, you got over 70 million people that voted for this guy. And they're still loose out there, and they showed you a few million of them yesterday.
I wanted to know, do you think the impeachment can happen still?
I heard this morning, they said the process would take so long. You've got 2 weeks and whatnot. They said, now, of course, they can fast track it, and it would have to be based, I think, on Pence and making some quick movements to make it happen. It can happen, but they're dragging the feet and they're saying, well, it's too much of a long process and whatnot. By the time that we get through and everything, he'll be out of office.
Mm-hmm. Well, can't they just fire him? Can't they just say you got to go and just go to the White House, get the cufflinks, what do you call them? Handcuffs, and go there, and arrest him and take him and put him in a federal penitentiary for the rest of his life. I don't know why we can't do it, because he tried to overthrow the government. To me, he's the king of the terrorists, and that's what they need to do. They need to put him in jail today.
Masha, you said it like his show that used to be on TV. You're fired.
Right, you fired. Donald Trump, you're fired. Right, and take his butt, put him in jail, prison, and I want his behind to go to the worst prison in the whole wide world, and I want him to be in that dungeon for the rest of his life
with a roommate named Bubba.
Bubba and company. But this is outrageous. Really I have been so upset about this. It really does not bode well for me, and for me to see all those crazy redneck white boys doing what they did, and they're dangerous. They are dangerous. They have no sense of integrity or respect. They're lawless. And I'm saying that because I've been around them. They're crazy. And something has to be done. And the fact that you've got this man sitting there being the puppeteer is outrageous. And he's all he has to do.
We're going to try to hear from Mr. Bob. We got a bug, that same bug from yesterday. But while we have you, please chime in and give your thoughts, and then we're going to have to kick you out. Oh, we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
You're muted now.
Yeah, you're muted now, and we couldn't hear you before. Okay, Cameron, how about you? I mean,
you're unmuted now, but we can't hear you.
We can hear her. Yeah. Who's the woman? Is that somebody you know?
He's got earphones on. Look like maybe might need to turn the earphones off. Oh,
Okay. We'll try next time. Okay. We'll try next time, Mr. Bob. Okay, Cameron, your thoughts.
I'm sorry. Cameron? Yeah, I'm here. My thoughts on.
Well, I mean, impeaching Trump.
Well, in terms of impeachment, yeah, like we said before, that process, as we saw in the process when we actually tried to impeach him, it's just going to take too long,
right?
And then time for the transition to occur. But I do believe there should be some work done to look into charging him for treason, and for his hand in inciting these riots.
Murder.
It's a lot troubling,
Was that not murder yesterday, Cameron?
Murder.
That woman, I mean, on
Murder.
television, she was shot, she died. I watched CBS for 3 hours through the night. She died. No, she was killed.
Yeah,
Murder.
I'm confused. She was a protest. She was one of the rioters, and one of the policemen that were there. That was one of the few shots they actually let off, and I believe she was a victim of their shooting. Because I was having
Why do you have a problem saying killed, Cameron?
It's like I said before. It's that disparity in the characterization of the people. The difference is in whether it was when a white person, a person of color does something. They're vilified. They're thugs. They're gangster. They're the most worst picture they can find. They're gonna pull up. But when little Billy goes and burns down the church. Oh, he was just misunderstood. He has mental issues. He's problematic. He's troubled. He needs help. And that's the exact same thing that happened yesterday.
But Cameron, they keep doing it. It's like having an unruly child that you refuse to check. Oh, give Johnny a pass. Time out, Johnny. Okay, then Johnny come home and take that 38 and put it to the mama head and just miss. He grazes across the head. And it's still, oh, Johnny's got a problem. No, Johnny need to go to the penitentiary.
Did you guys catch that video of the young white woman saying she was being interviewed and she was crying, I guess, because she had got tear gassed or something, or ruffled up by the officers, and they asked her, what was the problem? Like, what happened? She goes, we were infiltrating the Capitol. And she goes on to say, he's like, why? She said, it's a revolution. And it's that thinking, and it's scary because it's mental. It's a mental illness. To believe that you're entitled to storm the nation's capital, where our country's one of the country's most valuable tasks are accomplished, voting on how our country is policed and what laws we're to follow, and to think that you're entitled to go run in there, and when something happens to you, you're not even killed, you're just pepper sprayed, and to think that was wrong and you were entitled to that is a mental illness. And that same person, I completely believe that they were on the TV screaming, oh, look at these gangsters and these thugs who are peacefully marching for their rights, to be treated equally, to be treated fairly, not even to be allowed to building and not be shot down or arrested, or it's the audacity.
It's a wonderful way to be able to think. It is a wonderful way to be able to think in this country that you have the right to be wrong. You know what I mean? We've been fighting for the right to be wrong for a long time, but these people, they have it. They got something there. But at the same time, this behavior cannot be accepted by our government. There has to be consequences, because if we don't issue any consequences, it's just going to get worse. It's just going to get worse. We're talking about 70 million people voted for this man. I'm always saying 70 million. That's why I didn't think they were going to prosecute him, because he's got 70 million people behind him. Yeah. But, I think his behavior and conduct, even some of the senators who were complete loyalists, had to break ranks to a certain extent with him yesterday, because it was beyond the pale. It was beyond the pale.
And it makes me think also that, from an impeachment standpoint, or the 25th Amendment, if it was the term loosely, if it was serious enough, and I feel that it is serious enough, if it were truly needing to be done, they could rush that thing through and make it happen. But it makes me also think that it's not happening because Trump he's got to have a lot of information on the people that would take these actions against him.
70 million votes.
Yeah. Wait a second. Let's not follow the path that's created erroneously by the media as separating these folk from Trump. This was government action.
Yeah.
This was not not just private folk acting out. This was a riot orchestrated and called and requested by the government itself. That's why you don't see the government taking action to control it, because they did it. Secondly, impeachment won't remove him. Only a conviction in the Senate would remove him, and there's no trial. There's not enough time to conduct any trial in the Senate between now and January 20th. So impeachment is a non sequitur. Neither is the 25th Amendment, for the same reasons, because it would also come back. So the only way you're going to get him out of there between now and the 20th is if he decides to leave on his own, or if he does something so egregious that they would have no choice but to do it. But I don't think he's going to leave between now.
That wasn't enough yesterday. That wasn't enough.
No. It wasn't enough to call. 6 senators voted in favor of the objection against Arizona. 120 some congressmen, including a black guy. Well, not by my definition, but a dark-skinned white person from Florida named Byron Donalds from Florida's 16th district voted with the other Republican congressmen to support the objections. So no, that wasn't enough. But so he's going to be there. But everybody's right. These people were let in. They didn't all break in. The Capitol Police opened the door and let them in. They took pictures with them, selfies on the stairwell leading up to the offices.
Because
this was government action. So to think that the same government that ordered the action is going to take steps to punish the people who carried out the instructions is kind of silly.
That's where it's been circled, but that's where we're going and saying all the time.
Well, I think that this one called me silly. I think that this one may cause my belief silly. I think this one may merit some type of action. I think that's all. I will say that they all were not let in. Some you have video of people bursting out windows and coming in.
Sure.
So if they were let in, these people chose to go in another way with force and violence, and so that's what it was. But I agree with you. With your perspective, it's just as reasonable as anybody else's that this is an action that was orchestrated and allowed by the government, and that's why we're not seeing any appropriate reaction to it. So that's well said.
If so, then the question is, then bears the question: why? Why was it allowed?
Mm-hmm.
You really need to ask that question.
Yeah. You got 14 days before he leaves office. Everything is in a more or less stand down mode and whatnot. So the question is, what's the objective here? If they were allowed and set up, if he stood there like he did and says, we're going to go down to the Capitol and I'm going to be with you and everything, and he set them up yesterday and told them that and made them think that he was going to be there with them.
Keep his head fired up.
Set it up for it to take place and for it to happen. This had to be given to tell everybody else to stand down. The military, the National Guard, the DC police.
Well, DC police doesn't have anything to do with what happens.
I got that. But the action is in place. It's happened, and it was egregious as far as I'm concerned. But with 14 days left, what was the purpose of setting it up, knowing it's coming, and then stand back and allow it to happen?
I think he's making good on the campaign promise. I think he's giving those folks a chance to do what they always wanted to do, start a civil war. This was the brink of a civil war. I think that he wants to go that tomorrow. I mean, yesterday.
I got it with him. I'm saying, why did
infamy?
Why did the protections fail?
That's because they work for him. They work for him.
And they believe in everything he says and does. They are followers.
The Capitol Police work for the president. Who's going to give the order to arrest him?
All right, the DC police.
Who is going to give the order to arrest the president? That's right, nobody.
That's a black woman who manages the District of Columbia Police Department, but the reality is there's a number of white policemen that are there that have that same mentality. So they don't care. They're doing what they do.
Not only that, but
expecting something else.
who is going to give the order to arrest the president?
Nobody. That's why he's not arrested.
Exactly.
Well,
My point.
We just talked about the 25th. You just talked about the impeachment. Again,
you can't impeachment doesn't remove anybody. That's just impeachment is no more than an indictment. It's a charge. You're not removed unless you're convicted by trial later on in the Senate.
And it doesn't matter now because of the time frame. There's not enough time.
That's exactly right.
All that. And what the reality is what we need to be thinking about and focusing on is who is going to tell him to leave the building for Biden to go in and sit down. Who's going to be the one to say, brother, you got to go? Get your
I'll do it. Pick me.
I'll go. You got to go.
I already said Big Buster. Big Buster's on his way to DC right now. and I tell you, when Big Buster get there, he gonna create some openings where you can't see any today.
Let me just say this. That's why he's gonna get up. Somebody's gonna have the White House and the executive section of that place is going to be barricaded with half of them people that were down there on Capitol Hill. They're going to be up there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and blocking anybody from coming or going. I would bet money on that.
I hope you're wrong.
He's going to say they're going to have to take me out of here.
Not that what he says anybody should believe, but he has promised there will be an orderly transition on January 20th.
That's a lie.
I mean, you can believe that, but I don't, Marcia. Honestly, it may happen, but I don't think we're going to see a reenactment of this thing on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Because I think next time the police really are going to have to do their job.
Y'all playing with these white people. These are some crazy.
Why they gonna have to do
because they're going to have a different name on their paycheck. They're going to have a different name on their paycheck. That's why they're going to have to do it. The name on their paycheck going to be Biden, not Trump.
It's going to be the same.
I love an old school argument, man. This is good.
You keep dreaming. That is a dream, brother. I'm going to tell you right now, Donald Trump going to sit in that White House and he's going to wait and say, go call up Bobby. Go get Jerry, and I need you and the guys to get over here. They're standing outside and trying to get in. And he is going to block all that with those same people that were down there yesterday. This is not a joke. That man ain't playing. And if that's how he's feeling, that's what he's going to do. But here's
the problem, Marcia. You don't become president just because you live in the White House. That happens to be a place where the president lives. When Joe Biden is sworn in on January 20th by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and he becomes officially the president, all them people in uniforms work for him as of that moment. They will get Trump's ass out of the White House.
Mm-hmm. But they're gonna have to rally to get them out. So you're gonna have the whole special forces to go in there and bring down all those white boys that were standing outside and climbing up the walls and sitting in Pelosi's chair. They're going to have to get all of those 1,000 and some odd people. They're going to go to war. There's going to be a war on 16 Pennsylvania Avenue, or whatever that day.
Yesterday was a practice run.
That's it. Thank you.
Morocco, you think it's going to happen, Morocco?
Listen, man. He mentioned that I went to Vietnam. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, they programmed me when they sent me in there for warfare. Mm-hmm. They came to me one day and said, hey, man, grab your stuff. It's time to go home. Mm-hmm. In less than 48 hours, I was at Fort Stewart in Seattle, Washington, on the way back home. They didn't deprogram me when they took me out of there.
All right.
Okay.
Talk about it.
So a lot of the things that I see, I'm looking at it from a military mindset.
Yep.
Let's go back a few weeks ago. One of the first things that Trump did about 4.5, 5 weeks ago was as this thing started building up, he removed the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Your defense, you're talking about the Pentagon and everything else. That is your line of demarcation. Okay, that's your protection. So you got your perimeter set up, and that's your defense, and you control your men and everybody inside.
That's right.
Outside of that perimeter is a free kill zone. So now he removed the Secretary of Defense And up to this point, I don't think that he's been replaced. So
it wouldn't matter. The Secretary of Defense don't rule.
You either got an acting jack in there or somebody that is just null and void. Okay. So now this is all military precision here. So the military is not involved, the police not involved, and you're telling me, well, Trump told them all to stand down. Well, that shows some heck of a power. And this is a dry run. He's already shown you he's mentally ill. And we sit up here and try to make sense out of mental illness. so now this is just a dry run yesterday to see how far he could push this thing and where the weak points are.
Mm-hmm.
Should anything happen to the 6 Congress people that went along and continued with this protest?
Yes.
I mean, the 6 senators, absolutely. If their state laws allow for it, they ought to be subject to recall.
Mm-hmm.
But their constituents, you got to look at where they are. Those constituents were the same people that were outside blocking up the doggone thing.
None of this will work.
Overthrow the government and get away with that, like it's okay. I mean, there has to be some repercussions for them.
I think that anything that happened inside of the chamber is fair game. The lawlessness that happened outside of the chamber and on federal grounds, the breaking of the buildings, the encouraging, the aiding, the abetting, the inciting, the rioting. I think that is subject to some type of charge.
They all should be.
So what I'm hearing you say is there's nothing stopping this from happening again. It will happen again.
It could very easily happen.
Hey, look, if there are enough people out there that want to do it, this is a country where you can kill a president more than once. Okay, you can kill more than one of them. You can kill anybody. So yes, it can happen again. But the fundamental problem here that we haven't talked about is one reason why a lot of those people out there is because they believed a lie that's been told to them over and over and over again. So about the election. Now some of them out there just because they're crazy anyway, and they're just looking for some place to act out. Now I know that. I don't know what percentage it is. I don't know if anybody does. But a lot of them out there because they believe the lie that they've been told over and over and over again since November 3rd about what happened in the election. That's a lot. So the question I have for everybody is, should it be illegal for those seeking or holding public office to lie to voters with an intent of influencing how they exercise their vote?
And if it is illegal, what punishment should befall them?
What would be the consequence? What would be the consequence? And the question would be, what would be the consequence?
I don't like tampering with the First Amendment, to be honest with you.
They prosecuted Julius Henson for it, Ray. Remember that? They prosecuted Julius for doing exactly that.
Julius who?
Well, let me ask you one question.
Julius Henson on the robocall. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Oh, Julius Henson.
Yeah.
Henson. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. I know that it's been said in the past, and I haven't done the research on this myself, so you guys who are lawyers maybe can help me with the answer on this one. But is it possible that he was trying to start a civil war in order to maintain his position? Because it's been stated that if there's a civil war that breaks out before the president is out of office, he cannot be removed.
Well, the problem, the risk that you run when having a conversation with a crazy person is that a third party doesn't know who's who. I don't think Trump has any grand plan. I think Trump's plan is to do any and everything he can, hoping for the best. And the best for him is to stay in power. I don't think he expected it to work. But the point is, it was something else that he could do. Look, when you're Wendell will tell you one of the first rules from law school: if the facts are on your side, argue the facts. If the law is on your side, argue the law. If nothing on your side, just argue. Trump's in a just argue mode. Okay, he's doing anything. He don't know what's going to work. He doesn't have an idea what might, but he's going to do anything he can to disrupt the process, hoping that somehow, some way, out of it all, he'll emerge on top.
His legacy is going out on your shield. That's what it is, no matter what. And that's going to keep his base alive. I keep telling y'all, 70 million. If you had 70 million Twitter followers, you got power. Now,
no question.
You're a president with 70 million votes.
Yeah.
Any senator would want part of what you got. Anybody running for office in the South would want
Yep.
what you got. That's how he's able to maintain the loyalty that he enjoys from these minions who do his bidding for him, because he's got 70 million votes.
And we keep talking about that,
Right.
but where's the 80? Where's the 80? The other 7 million, the other 80 million that voted for Biden? Why aren't we hearing their voices?
Because
Why
they're
are they?
not ignorant.
We got
They're
Biden.
crazy.
Why in the media? Why in the media talking to those people? We keep talking about 70 million. Yeah, he got 70 million, but the idea is not how many you get. The idea is whether you win.
He lost.
The 80 million nice guys all saying, I ain't messing with that crazy dude.
Somebody speaking for us, but now for that 80 million, Biden speaks for the 80 million. And hopefully he'll get some of that 70 million, because he's going to need some of that 70 million to run this country. That's why I was kind of skeptical about whether or not they would prosecute Trump, because that 70 million is part of the, I guess, 15 million that make up this country, or whatever it is, at least the voters of this country. They'd have something to say one way or another. It would cause more division and derision. And what if you prosecuted and lost? My. That's worse than prosecuting.
At the end of the Civil War, they had all these generals from the South, and they said, you know, they're going to have to be executed because this is treason and sedition against the United States government.
Yeah.
They tried to overthrow the United States government.
Yep.
And so Lincoln said, well, no, we got to rebuild America, and we got to all come by y'all. We got to all come together. So let them slide.
Well, actually, it wasn't Lincoln. He was dead by then. But the point is the same.
And right to this day, we still fighting the Civil War, trying to get rid of the flags and all that redneck stuff coming. You know, so.
But they think they got some after this.
I don't know about that 70 million. They've shown you really their true colors and who they are.
And you better believe them.
Yeah.
The first time.
Right.
Well, wait a minute. Now, not all of the 70 million were actually despicables. You had a lot of those 70 million people who Trump actually made rich over the last 4 years. He had a lot of support from them, and a lot of those folk that he made rich over the last 4 years look like you and me. Okay, so they were not all despicables, and we don't. And Trump and Biden's burden is not to be able to call in 70 million people who voted for Trump. Most people, I don't think, believe. Most people still believe, I hope, that you win. That winning has consequences, as Platypus says. I'm talking about Mitch McConnell, Moscow Mitch. That winning has consequences, and so does losing. Most people, I think, are still willing to accept the system where if you win, you get to make certain decisions, and if you lose, you wait till you get a chance to run again. Most people still believe in that, I think.
Well,
Mark, I got to ask you a question. What is the role? And we're going to wrap this up. We've been on
Hour.
Almost an hour. What is the role of the black press in this? We've heard terms. Morocco introduced us yesterday to the term sedition. We've talked about, they didn't say that the woman who was killed, they said she died. What is the role of the black media in telling this historic story?
What is black media?
but there's
the Chronicle.
What is black media? Is that a company owned by people with dark skin? What is that?
Those writers who chronicle the black experience for historical sake. That's what I think black media is.
Well, we ain't got to worry about that because it ain't but one or two of them out there.
Oh, there's a lot of them out there.
Where are they? Where are they?
They're all over.
Where are they?
There's a whole list. Why don't you go in
You got three of them right here in Atlanta. You got the Atlanta Daily World over 100
You got
years old.
Baltimore.
You got the Atlanta Voice. You got the Atlanta Inquirer.
Go to NMPA.
I asked the question. Donnie asked the question, what is the role of the black media? I asked, where is the black media and what is it?
Report the truth.
I just told you we got three of them all here in Atlanta.
Well, if that's true, why don't we hear their voices?
Well, we do hear their voices. I get information every day from different black.
Well, then why does Donnie ask what's their role? If they're there and we hear their voices, then why Donnie's question? What is the role? Isn't that the role?
He put it out to hear what we had to think about it, not because it didn't exist. He wants
it exists, and they're chronicling. They're writing stories just like everybody else. There's a whole list of them. You can get the list, nnpa.org.
Well, why does the black media have a role that's different from any other media?
I think because we got different.
Why do they have Jewish? Why do we have the Jewish papers? Why do we have people
Good
who
question.
write papers?
Good
Okay,
question.
because they
We are not all the same.
community. Boy, I ain't talking to you.
But you know what I want to see media do, Donnie? I want media to lay the groundwork, set the stage for reparations. Now let's talk about what happened good yesterday. We got two senators confirmed.
Yes.
We got two senators. So this whole thing stole that thunder. But there was
and that might have been part of the point.
Right. There was an earth-moving event that occurred yesterday in addition to the riotous insurrection. We were able to achieve a really incredible feat of getting two Democratic senators out of the state of Georgia. And one of them was an African American.
And he was here in Baltimore.
He was what?
He used to live here. Why not?
Oh, see?
Yeah.
He used to go. He was
and Donnie, being black media, was instrumental in working with my organizations, Veterans for Progress, along with Stacey Abrams. Donnie gave us his platform, and we did 3 shows with him where we had aligned veterans throughout the whole state of Georgia, and we had a network, et cetera, et cetera. So that was black media at its finest.
Yes.
Yeah, so,
and this is black media at its finest. Absolutely. And I think the thing that's really critical here that we have to really deal with is that we need to make certain that our voices are heard in every community where we're located. Yeah. And people aren't going to tell our stories. We have to tell our own stories, because if you pick up any of the daily papers anywhere in the country, anywhere, you will not find stories about anything positive. The only thing that you're going to see is how many of us were arrested or broke into something. It's rare. It's rare. And
I want to talk about reparations, Donnie. I think that black media needs to stop shying away from that issue. And I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking about in general. We need to really confront this issue, because if it's ever a time to be in hot pursuit of it, it is this time right now when we again save this country, save this democracy from disaster. So I think that I'm
appointing you as a board member of the African American Relief and Reparations Fund.
Okay. All right.
You're a founding member of the board of that organization.
Well, there you go. I'll be there. I'll be there.
And I start my own too, the Empty Pocket Fund.
So we noticed, we learned through this pandemic that there's been a lot of money that's been under rocks, under the tables, in the back room that they can give out to. They gave applications to corporations.
Yep.
Because of the way they
$1 million corporations.
The coronavirus. This CARES Act is nothing but reparations for corporations for their suffering throughout this pandemic.
Well, yeah, and then they got to worry about how much those 7-8 figures that they're paying to the CEOs. They got to get that money, pay them.
Mm-hmm. So it's time, and I don't think black advocacy should be at the forefront. None of that black and brown, people of color. I want black advocacy.
Man, you are singing my song now. You are singing my song.
That black advocacy is
they tie themselves to us.
Was talking about before.
Anybody to get what we want. We have enough issues that whatever we do for ourselves is going to affect everybody else anyway. So let's call it what it is: black advocacy.
Let's hear from the lady, Kavette. You were making a point.
I'm sorry, Kavette.
Yeah, that black advocacy is actually, and where that starts is very much what Mr. Coleman was talking about before, and recognizing the trauma. Yesterday was a major traumatic event, on top of the traumatic event of the pandemic that many people have experienced this year. And then for Blacks, we have to recognize the traumas that we've experienced from the past and our responses based on the PTSD that Mr. Coleman was talking about. PTSD was identified initially as a military disorder, but what we found over the years and really paying attention to people's symptoms and responses is that PTSD is a traumatic response. So any traumatic situation that you can encounter from childhood through adulthood, and especially the things that we've been experiencing around the world over the last year, this has been very traumatic, and we're seeing people responding in that way. And so we have to be able to address that, not only on a large scale, but especially in our community, because that's where we are going to start in being able to recognize our civil rights as well as our financial rights, because we've gone far beyond the civil rights at this point in time. We got to get our money straight in order to make sure that we have our power placed properly.
Well, and part of that means, if I may, there are black folk among us with a lot of money. I mean, there are black folk among us who give more money to the Baltimore Museum of Art than they do to Morgan, or to Morehouse, or to black institutions, or to the Reginald Lewis Museum, for that matter. Okay, we that's what I keep saying. You're right. We have all that we need in our own home. The problem is we don't have any faith or confidence in it, because unless and until white folks tell us to use it the way they want us to use it. That's the problem. We did not elect two senators in Georgia. We elected one black and one young Jewish fella. Now, who is his loyalty is going to be to when the rubber hits the road? It's not going to be to us. That's fine. It's better than. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad he won. I don't get me wrong about that. But the fact of the matter is, he's not a part of our community, and the time will come when he shows that on one issue or the other. In the meantime, we have people in our own community, not just LeBron James, not just Colin Kaepernick, not just. I mean, we got billionaires in our own community, not just Tyler Perry. He can't do it all. We've got billionaires in our own community that do not support black business, do not support black people, for that matter.
I'm hoping that what we saw in Georgia, the galvanization, when I watched this whole election from infancy until its final gasp yesterday, I felt and saw something, man, throughout the whole state among our people. That was a shift change, man. It was a paradigm shift from a mental standpoint to me. And it showed the power that we do have when we come collectively. I am hoping that we can piggyback on that and take it to the next level, like Wendell was saying, to address reparations now with a little bass in our voice, instead of like, well, I hope Master don't get mad for us asking for it. No, we need to go in and start demanding. We put a new president in, and we put 2 new senators in, and turn the state of redneck Georgia into blue.
Hey, how about this? How about telling Biden that his rich tax, right, that extra $400 million that he wants to raise from people who make $1 million or more? How about if we put 10% of that into the African American Relief and Reparation Fund, just to get started, okay? Just so we have a couple, just so we can go get some lunch and snacks or something, okay? So let's start there, and then anyway, I'll stop. Go ahead.
That's right.
Can anyone explain? Did you see if there was a Caucasian woman on television? She had the cowboy hat on, and she was saying, we need 8 more soldiers to the front. Did anyone see her?
But I believe she was there.
She was right in the middle, and she was like directing traffic, and she said, we need 8 more soldiers to the front. I'm just trying to understand what manner of privilege does a Caucasian person have where they disregard every bit of law, decency, humanity in the year 2021 on international television?
You got to remember. You got to remember. Yesterday, in that mob, you better believe that it was infiltrators in there that rolled in on the coattails of the dummies that were knocking out the windows and trying to get in there to get the picture taken, sitting in the chair and all of that. You better believe that it was a coordinated effort for whether Underground or the what boys,
Yep.
can't think of the name of.
Yep.
You better believe that group of unsuspecting rioters and terrorists were also infiltrated by subterranean cultures up in there.
And be very clear about that. And
Yeah.
they aren't necessarily coming from the United States. And so with the relationships that have been going on and the terrorism that has been going on and how we have infiltrated everybody else's country, you better believe that this is an opportunity that these people are going to take advantage of, and the next one's not going to be as easy.
And they look like how God ride the white folk.
Right.
You just tell me what my final question. What does the world think of the United States right now?
Punks, that we're punks.
Jay Wendell, what's the international perception? I saw a statement from the leader of the EU, and they laughed. They were essentially laughing at what we call democracy.
We're punks.
We are. We have a.
And what would they have done in another country had this went down? What would they have done if this happened at the Kremlin?
It wouldn't have.
We
wouldn't happen.
Assuming ourselves.
Well, first of all, you would have had a whole military display.
Oh, you mean
if this were a real administration, you would have had all of the Marines and Special Forces deployed around the Capitol for blocks. Nobody would have been able to penetrate any of that. They would have had helicopters, fighter pilots in helicopters over all that ground where all those people were. They would have had people within those crowds deployed to take advantage of anything moving that gave them the opportunity to have them removed. But that means that you are dealing in a stealth environment. That means that you have leadership that's listening to the people who are supposed to be in charge. Nobody within the leadership of the military. There were 200 and some odd active and retired generals of all colors that were against what Donald Trump and what he's been doing. And you mean to tell me if he were not in charge, if somebody else was in leadership, we would not be having this conversation because it would not have been allowed to happen.
Morocco, your thoughts? Would this have happened in another country? I mean, I saw where they in Asia, some countries in Asia, they were hitting people with those canes when they wouldn't wear the mask, or when they came out into the community. Would this have happened in another country?
No.
Or would they have put it down?
You see some of these countries now still going through those kind of things. Marshall says it's a coup d'etat.
Right.
Okay. So you see the military come out and all the conflict and the whole 9 yards there. But, it's just like, okay, I got a book here I've been holding on to for many, many years, man.
What's that?
It's called Behold the Pale Horse. Okay. Now, they told us yesterday, man, they had to get all those congressmen, senators had to go to their offices and climb up under the desk and all that kind of stuff. Okay. They weren't even there. Okay. Now we do know that they got underground systems there at
yes, they do.
Right. Okay. And they said there's a place about 30 miles over in Virginia called Mount Weather. Okay. So I'm just throwing that out there. Everything that we see ain't what we think it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap this up. Kavette Kane, you're the mother of 2 black men. You've seen this country on the perils of tyranny. Your thoughts before we close out?
Well, for them, it's, just to continue to be conscious, to pay attention, and to protect themselves.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. And I know my father was a gun collector, and he protected himself. He made sure that that he had not only for his personal protection, of course, he had some for his collection, but that was never a question for him. And so what we've seen even with the pandemic is that in our community, many Black men have had to go out, and one of the longest lines was in the gun shops, because people know that when there's scarcity, then people kind of lose their minds, go a little bit of crazy, and you got to make sure that you can protect what you have, and who you are. And, that to me is just, it's a scary thing, that we have to get to this point, and that all we're continuing to see is this spiral down, but that's the reality that we're living right now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. King. J. Wendell Gordon, your thoughts as we wrap it up?
We got to find some way, Biden's got to find some way to restore this country, restore humanity, restore faith, and restore hope, because I think that's what's lacking at this time. I think we're going to have to find a way to start to, as Biden a leader, it's going to have to find a way to start reaching across the aisle and building some coalitions. We as African Americans need to continue to pursue our agenda, pursue our goals, and not be ashamed to raise our issues in public forum and advocate for them. That's what we have to do.
Yeah.
Attorney Bob Michelle, you going to give us the final comment?
I never gave up my guns. And when I don't want this country to return to what it was, because what it was is the reason why we are where we are. We need this country ain't never going to be right until they do what was said in The Color Purple. Until you do right by me, ain't nothing good going to come to you.
All right.
Until you do right by me, ain't nothing good going to come to you. We got to have this discussion about reparation. There is a debt to be paid. It ain't going to go away, and it's just accruing more and more interest every day. So the sooner you get to the table, we start talking about how you're going to pay this bill, the sooner we can get on with the rest of our lives. I'm done.
All righty.
Morocco Coleman, thank you for joining us. Your final thought for today.
My final thought for today is keep your head to the sky. Be aware of what's going on around us. Be ready to take care of your personal business, and just watch the movements. And there's an old African saying, and it's the word Saba, S-E-A. Okay, Saba means deep African thinking. So don't just get caught up in the everyday machinations of what we see. Just sit down and kind of meditate a little bit, man, and look at it and put pieces together. And that was something like what we were doing today. Everything that we saw yesterday is not what we thought we saw. But we peeled away the layers on some of this stuff here. And it's given a different perspective of ways to look at things. And that's what we're going to have to do now going forward, because we're going to step into a new administration. And yes, we're supposed to have all the people in place that we need there and whatnot, but we got to hold them accountable. And right now, with what we have shown in turning this state blue, and getting those senators there, it's showing the world actually the power of the Black vote and Black people. And we are now into an ascension, and we've got to take this to the next level. So stay positive.
Good deal. We'd like to thank Edible Arrangements of Brenbrook and York Road, also to Bishop Barry Pest Control. While we were having the broadcast, Bishop Barry just announced his new product. He has his own ale. So Bishop Barry, kudos to you for all of your great work, including his extermination business. My name's Donnie Glover.
Does he use the ale for the pest control?
Uh-huh.
Can he use the ale for the pest control?
Stop.
Keep watching BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Have a good day.
All right, bye, everybody.
See you.